On March 5th, 1983, 68 dog teams and their drivers left Anchorage, racing across Alaska some 1,200 miles to Nome. The Iditarod Trail International Sled Dog Race has been called the last great race on Earth. At the start, the number of dogs in any team varied from 11 to 18, and at the finish, the smallest team was 5, the largest 14. This was the 11th running of the Iditarod, but it was the first one to start in downtown Anchorage. The excitement of the start is quickly forgotten as the mushers settle into a schedule of driving dogs, feeding dogs, and resting dogs. From checkpoint to checkpoint, the teams move through mountain ranges, river valleys to the Norton Sound and the Bering Sea, and then to Nome. All of the extremes you've ever heard about Alaska are involved in the Iditarod. And when you ask someone why they run the Iditarod, you hear things like, I just want to see what kind of dogs I've got, or I want to see the country, or I want to win. The day after the race started this year, I spoke with race founder Joe Redington. He sat out this year's Iditarod. During training, a moose trampled his sled, and his injuries prevented him from running for the 10th time. We begin this program with Redington. He had been describing the trail, and according to Joe, this is how it feels when you finish an Iditarod.
And then when you get into Nome, it's the greatest feeling in the world. You think you went to heaven.
It's just about at night, about 10 o'clock at night, as Rick Mackey running down the chute, looking fine and good. The dogs are not at least scared or intimidated by the huge crowd around him. Dogs coming straight down the chute. Not many of them do that. Most of them have to be led down the chute in the confusion of the crowd. But no, Rick Mackey comes across. Rick Mackey, the winner of the 1983 Iditarod Sled Dog Race.
I'm exhausted, but I'm really happy. I don't even know how happy I am. It hasn't really hit me yet.
You're saying, like at Elam, that the thing that would get you here was just driving and hard work. What did you do to get that much extra out of the dogs? How do you do?
Well, all them big hills today, I ran up every one of them, and I was pushing the sled, actually. The dogs weren't even pulling. It was so hot out. Their lines were slacking. I was pushing the sled up them hills and down the other side darn near. And then I got down on the coast there, and someone told me I was like 8 miles behind, or no, 10 miles behind. And I thought, 10 miles, well, that's not very far. So I started pushing like heck, and I don't know, them dogs just had so much. I never seen a team like them. I mean, they're really strong. They're, I don't know, I never could get them tired. I pushed hard, too, and they just didn't get tired.
Rick, you said that Swenson was the man to beat in Unit League. Everybody was saying you kept saying, no, it's Swenson. He's won it 4 times.
Well, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Were you surprised when he didn't make his push?
Yeah, I really was. This morning when I heard he was still in Elam, I couldn't hardly believe it. In fact, I didn't even believe it today. Someone, when I was coming across them hills today, said, yeah, or it was that Merlin Johnson. He says, yeah, Swenson's back there, went back to sleep. And I says, I'll believe it when I get to Nome.
You believe it?
I believe it now. Yeah, I believe it now.
What about the other dog teams, Rick?
13.
It's a lucky number. It's got to be the best one going.
What about the other dog teams, Rick?
Yeah. A lot of them good guys are way back there, like Emmett and Swenson and Sonny and Susan. I don't know. I just went out and I just ran my own race. I didn't really care what anybody else did. I just did what the dogs were able to do. I think really a lot of dogs are capable of doing a lot more than we usually make them do.
Rick, out in Elam last night, you said that your dogs were wagging their tails, and you said you were going to push them, and you said when they got to Nome, they shouldn't be wagging those tails. Did you push them as hard as you could?
I think so. They look pretty pooped, but yet they're going like heck. I wasn't even saying a word to them coming in here. I was just hanging on, making sure I stayed on the trail, and I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing right, but it worked.
Rick, in 1925, 19 mushers relayed diphtheria serum along the Iditarod Trail to Nome. Did you think about that, mushing on into Nome this evening?
Nope, I didn't think about that. I just thought about Eeps right on my butt, and I better keep going.
Rick Mackey is the next team who's coming up to the line. Rick Mackey has his daughter riding in the basket right at the moment, and he's saying goodbye to her. As Rick Mackey, his wife is up with the leaders right now, just keeping them calm, with the swing dogs right at the moment, keeping them calm is Rick Mackey's wife.
Mackey is
come in, just run through his race statistics real quickly here. 11th in 82, 9th in 81, 8th in 79, 23rd in 77. First rang in 75, came in 13th.
Giving the final encouragement to his team is Rick Mackey. Headed down the trail, double sled for Rick Mackey. Number 13 is his number to take off.
One of the things that's nice about the Iditarod is there's no guarantees. And if there were, it wouldn't be worth doing.
You know, 10 years ago, if you'd have told anybody that we'll be running 68 teams off of 4th Avenue, they'd have said we was crazy, and I would have probably agreed with them.
I don't particularly care for my dogs. My dogs are not used to in town. They're not used to cars and people, and then the snow conditions are hauled in, and they're not sanitary as far as I'm concerned. The dogs, when it's hot and they're all moving around and excited, they start picking up dipping snow, and I don't particularly care for that. And I think this caused a lot of the problems of early sickness on the race.
Why not start any place, you know? Wherever the committee wants us to start, we'll start. We'll have a good start.
Of course I don't like that, but I'm anxious to support the merchants, and we must do it.
I don't care if they start on top of the Westwood Hotel, just so everybody starts the same.
Anchorage has always been a really big supporter of this race. It's been kind of a shame in the past that a large percentage of the money that's earned, it costs roughly $500,000 to put this race on. And a large percentage of it is probably raised from, the largest percentage is raised in Anchorage. I think it was thought that it would both increase maybe the publicity, the interest, and be able to give something back to Anchorage.
The record number of 68 teams entered in the 1983 Iditarod includes 31 rookies to the Iditarod, but not necessarily to dog mushing. Roxy Woods, the 6-time world champion sprint racing, is a rookie in this race, but it's safe to say that she knows something about dogs. There are 10 women in this race. That's more than ever before. The youngest musher is 18. The oldest is 77. The mushers come from all parts of Alaska, and they also come from Minnesota, Montana, New York, and Norway. There are doctors and builders and miners and trappers, husbands and wives. There are even professional mushers. There are 2 men whose fathers are also running this year's race. There will be 1 Rookie of the Year. There will be 1 person to come in last, 1 musher to come in first. Right now, they're all in the same position, all hoping that all of their sacrifices and their work, and for most of them, most of their money, will get them from right here on 4th Avenue to Front Street in Nome.
Ken Ham is ready to take off. Has a number of handlers, 1 handler for each set of dogs that he has along. Will, did you get a count on the number of dogs?
Yeah, he's got 16 dogs, and Ken is a rookie in this race. He did run in the KSKO 300 this year, and as each handler is required, mandatory to take a handler with him, and as these dogs are real wild when they first go out, they want to go like hell, it's mandatory that they have a handler with them that can either be on top of the sled with the musher, behind the sled with the musher. We got a countdown here on the start of the 83 Iditarod.
And there he is, across the line. Ken Ham running down 4th Avenue, Anchorage. Next team to come up, of course, is Susan Butcher.
Roxy Wood's team is just going right by her team. Of course, her team is used to going past other dog teams from the Fur Rendezvous. We all have all 68 teams, 69 teams if you consider the first one, that ceremonial team. All 69 teams are off, and the 1983 Iditarod is underway here. A beautiful day. From our point of view, there wasn't any problems here at the start, although that It remains to be seen.
We'll have to check that on at Eagle River to find out just if everything indeed did go smooth. We'll try to...
As you look at the board there, Tim, where have we got mushers through to at this point, according to your handboard there?
Well, they're going through Highland. First one's through Highland Drive, which is Susan Butcher. But Will Peterson is here. He has Rosemary Phillips and Joanne Potts.
Right here, standing around me
right
is
here.
Bob Sepp, the president of the Trail Committee, Rosemary Phillips, the executive director, and Joanne Potts, the administrative coordinator. And who wants to start boasting first about how this went today? Rosemary?
I'll let Bob Sepp handle this.
I can't say much except that it worked, and that's what we were all worried about. And Rosemary Phillips is the one who was responsible for most of it with the help of John Brobst. Everybody helped out, but the city of Anchorage, too, deserves credit because they were the ones who put up the dollars and much of the support for getting the 4th Avenue start going. So
I think one of the things that a whole lot of people aren't real clear on, that this is not a ceremonial start. This was the official start of the race, and that was also billed as the first annual. Is this going to happen again?
we hope so. City of Anchorage will do it annually if snow conditions permit and if the funds are available. It's expensive to haul snow in and set up snow fence and arrange electrical power source. This is where the dollars come in, and hopefully it will be an annual event.
Thanks, Bob. Rosemary, has there been an estimate on how much it cost the city to do this? We asked the mayor earlier today, and he wasn't real sure.
I can't give you a figure on that. I've never heard. No, I know that budgets were turned in to Bill Lindsay, who was the coordinator, and Bill cut them all in half. So I don't know.
Okay, an operating budget this year, the cost of the race is roughly
$500,000.
Okay, now is that all? That's the bills, or that's how much it cost, and that's how much we paid?
That's the total of what it costs to operate and to run this race of a 12-month job.
Okay, now you have a deficit of about 85 grand from last year, is that right?
About 100,000 from last year.
Okay. How can that be made up?
First, I cut the budget for the operating budget, going after sponsors, membership I'm trying to increase. Like I said, just cutting the budget and hoping that we can pick it up through sponsors.
Okay, where does the executive director of the Trail Committee go from here now that the 69 mushers are gone?
Well, we're going to get them up the trail.
When you get to Settlers Bay, we've run out of different places, but I like Settlers Bay the best of all because you go right onto the Iditarod Trail right at Settlers Bay. And that's the whole thing about this race is running the Iditarod. I hate to see them very off to other places because that's not the Iditarod. And you know, the purpose of this race was to bring the dogs back to Alaska and to get the trail into the National Trail System. And we did that by having the race. The publicity that the race got brought us the trail. So we want to keep it on the trail as much as we can. Once you leave Kinnick, why, it's a different feeling altogether. You've got to worry about 9 Mile Hill and a few little things like that. And then it's free country then. I mean, you got no automobiles, no problems. There's one little road now, Burma Road, that's open this year, but there's probably only 1 or 2 cars a day on it, so you don't worry too much about that. And then it's great when you get to Susitna. Why, we went different ways there. We went on the trail once. This year the trail is perfect up the river, so they're using the river, and up to the Yentna Roadhouse. And it's nice to go like to the roadhouse and all. You get a warm welcome, and you get hot cup of coffee and some soup or sandwiches or whatever you want, and you get to see whoever is in there. You know pretty well what you're doing by that time, whether you're up near the front or you're way back, and then the race, I think, really begins.
Of Anchorage at 5:32, David Wolf of Anchorage out at 5:36, Scott Cameron of Palmer at 5:47, Steve Haver of Onalaska at 6:16. Those 64 mushers out of Settlers Bay. Only 4 mushers at this time still have not checked out of Settlers Bay. That is Doug Bartko and Hal Bartko of Palmer, Ron Gould of Fairbanks, and Norman McAlpine.
Oh, well, I was going to change my runners, and so I did that and started out late. And, you know, what could I say? I just got there. They were closing down already. I guess they had already had me scratched. But I'm glad I put on new runners because they really got abused. So I just started a few hours late, and like I said, I did go right out and fell asleep halfway between Yetna Station and Connect, and woke up in the morning and everybody was gone. But besides that, I guess I just started in the back and ended in the back.
You've got to worry about the pass. If there's not much snow, you may have real icy conditions, and I know a lot of mushers that got wet going down into the Rhone. I remember Terry Adkins fell in the water, and the ice slopes down and breaks away, and then you got running water, and it slants right down towards the water, and it's extremely difficult to keep out of the water. And that's always a place to worry about. And then you get into Rhone, and then it's beautiful there. It's a nice cabin, and you can always go in and get something to eat. And those that want to can call back home as a ham there. And it's always a nice spot. And a lot of us took our 24 hours there at Rhone because the dogs has had a pretty rough trip going over the pass. And I know a lot of different years I've took my 24 there, and I know Swenson has too.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to take my rest here.
Do you think you'll stay the full 24 at this point?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, always do.
And it's, well, to rescue dogs there because you got a pretty tough trail then over to Nikolai. It's a long distance. And this year, for the first time in several years, we've got the burn area all cleaned up, and it should be a real nice trip through there, except when they lost the trees from all the burning, the wind is a problem. And you'll get a lot of gravel. It'll blow right down the trail, especially now if it's all cut out. And there probably won't be very much snow on the trail. There'll be a lot of gravel. And it'll be pretty tough going. Then we go into Nikolai, and you're always welcome in Nikolai. They always have cake and coffee and a nice place to get warm, and have hot water for everybody's dog food, and all the help you want. It's really a welcome place to be. And then you got a real nice trail usually into McGrath. It's times that it hasn't been real well marked, and there's a few trapper trails and things to go off, but lately it's been marked nice, and it's about a 50-mile run, but it's you do it real quick. All level country, and then going to McGrath, and McGrath has always been a wonderful place to be. We've always been more than welcome in McGrath.
There's my action snowshoes, Sam. See? See it?
Yep.
That's my pouch right there.
Do what?
My
Pouch?
Yeah. Sleeping bag in here. And here's a whole bag of dog goodies. Under here, $100. More in there. I don't want to stop them in the sun or they'll lay down. I can't get them going again. Thank you. This is handier now.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
All right. All right.
Right, Cowboy Smith did check in at 1:52 this afternoon with 12 dogs, and 29 minutes later he declared that he would take his 24-hour layover, the third checkpoint in a row that he did declare as 24-hour. We'll see this evening if he's intending to stick here for the whole 24 hours. Susan Butcher is the only other musher out on the trail at this time on her way to McGrath from Nikolai, that 48-mile trip. She checked out at 3:15 this morning. Susan also canceled a 24-hour layover. She checked into Nikolai this morning at 5:53, declared her 24-hour layover, canceled it, and is on the trail and is expected in here sometime around 10 or 11 this evening.
My dogs didn't look tired enough to deserve a 24-hour rest, and
Roan, and if I'd have stayed 24, I'd have left there in the heat of the day the next day, and I didn't want to do that. And leaving then, I got to, they rested in Roan during the heat of the day. I traveled at night, got into Nikolai, rested there all during the heat of the day, and came over here at night, and so had good times. The number of hours of traveling time they've had on the trail so far is very few, and they've just been getting a lot of rest, and now they've taken a 24, and they look good now, and they'll be leaving out of here a fresh, good team, and that's more important, I think, at this moment as to whether I'm 5 hours behind someone.
2 mushers in Nikolai, Rick Mackey. Checked in at 8:39 this morning. Terry Atkins at 8:43 this morning. Both of them declared their 24-hour layover, and both of them are about halfway through that.
I tell you, I don't understand why a lot of them guys like to take their 24 at Roan. I just thought for the last 2 years I've wanted to leave, but I couldn't talk anybody into going with me, and I didn't want to be the only one out there wandering around. And this year I knew I wasn't staying. I didn't care if I had to leave on my own, because it's not my idea of the best place to take it. It's too soon. It's too early in the race. I think this is just right. You're about 300 miles out, and you've got a good trail to leave on. I mean, why get your dogs all freshened up again and take off and beat them through the burn and have a beat-up mess when you get here? I mean, poke along for the first 300 and then rest them good, and then go and race. If the trail is there to do it. Cowboy.
Good luck to you.
You are Dale Carter, the race vet.
Yeah.
What? These teams have been setting a pretty blistering pace here. You've had a chance to look at like Cowboys teams, some of the other teams. How are they holding up?
The teams I've seen are holding up real well. They are in excellent condition this year, better condition than I've seen in the past, and they seem to be doing real well. I just got through talking with Cowboy about his, and he thinks they're doing pretty good. And he's got a couple of minor problems, but nothing real substantial.
Does it? You said you were surprised. What seems to be the difference between the dogs maybe this year and in years you've seen in the past?
Well, I think it's the conditioning of the dogs, and trail conditions this year are overall they're pretty darn good. We've had some problems in certain areas, but overall the conditions have been real good.
What are the kinds of things that really stress a dog on a race like this, in terms of good conditions, bad conditions?
Well, if we get into an area where you got really deep snow and the trail's not cleared out, it's really tough on a dog. Or if you get into an awful lot of ice or areas where the snow cover is not real deep, then that causes some problems too. We get cut pads and occasional sprains and this type of thing. But we're not seeing any, or to any degree, the infectious conditions that we have in the past either. The respiratory infections, we've just got a couple of those so far, and overall they're just looking real good.
Eep Anderson has the lead. He is out of Ophir at 7:49 yesterday evening, 15 dogs in his team. Cowboy Larry Smith out at 8:41 yesterday evening, 10 dogs with his team. He dropped 1 at Ophir. Terry Adkins then led the pack out this morning, 6 a.m. Terry left from Ophir. Levon Barvey was next at 7 a.m. along with Herbie Nakpuk of Shishmaref at 7 a.m. Dwayne Halverson of Trapper Creek and Rick Mackey of Wasilla were out at 7:25. Then it came Dave Monson. He left at 7:45. He dropped 2 dogs at Ophir. And Susan Butcher left at 8 o'clock from Ophir. 12 dogs in her team. That's on the 90-mile stretch on the way to the halfway prize at Iditarod. Into Ophir, at the last report, Rick Swenson and Sonny Lindner arrived at 7:25. Also, Roger Lagarde arrived in at 8 o'clock. Howard Albert at 8:10, and Alex Sheldon of Ambler arriving at 8:57. Those are teams into Ophir. Out of Takotna on their way to Ophir, there's a 38-mile trail. It's Sue Furman and Dee JONROWE leaving at 5:50 this morning. 12 dogs in Furman's team, 13 for JONROWE. Then it's out next, Emmett Peters left at 8 a.m. from Takotna with 12 dogs in his team. And shortly after, John Barron of Big Lake with 8:35 was when he left from Takotna. Neil Eklund is also out at 9 o'clock. 10 dogs in his team. Bert Baumhoff at 9:31, left with 12 dogs in his team. That's from Takotna on their way to Ophir. Currently in Ophir, there are two mushers, Neil Eklund, who is expected to leave shortly, actually we have him out of Takotna. He has already left, but Bert Baumhoff is the musher into Takotna. 9:07 this morning, Bert Baumhoff arrived into Takotna. Also out of McGrath, on his way to Takotna, is Bill Coert with 12 dogs in his team.
Well, I don't think I've slowed down, really. I think that back in Rome that I was probably a little prematurely in Rome, but actually where I'm at now is about where I'm very happy right now.
How do the dogs look? How are they doing?
Well, all my dogs except one. I have one that's had some diarrhea and he's kind of pooped, and other than that, the rest of them are doing pretty good. It's a little warm for them during the day, and they're not moving as fast, but I notice my times between McGrath and Takotna are about like everybody else's, and mine really hot-footed at night, so I'm going to rest a little more during the day and run them at night.
You're going to what? You're going to have to carry that one dog up to Ophir?
Oh, yeah, but that really doesn't bother me. Most of it's going to be downhill anyway, so.
You think what? You think you drop him at that point, or you just wait and see what happens?
Yeah, I'm not so concerned about whether I drop him or keep him because I've still got 11 good dogs, but I'm more concerned with making sure he's taken care of, because I'm more concerned about the dog.
Well, when I came on duty this morning as checker, we had Neil Eklund was here in the village working on his sled, and Emmett Peters had come in before or after him and had come up below the bridge, which is not the checkpoint there, and he said that then that he had to break trail to get to Takotna, and he was told you shouldn't have had to do that. And as many years as Emmett's run the race, I'm sure that he knows the way from McGrath to Takotna. So I came in and told David and Fred Miller and this, what he had said. And they were saying, no, he must have got lost. And they got to think, well, Emmett knows the route. And so Fred Miller and Frank Torres got on snow machines and drove up just to see if it was. And positively somebody had cut off the main trail and directed them out this other way. And all it is really is a snow machine trail where, the kids go out and have fun.
I like to stop in Takotna, too. I stop there and have a cup of coffee. And I've had buffalo and different kinds of meat there at Takotna, and it's a fine place to stop and visit a little while. It's a checkpoint, but it's not a food drop or anything. And then we start up the big hill there that's about 7 miles, and I'm always glad to get over that because that's always a big climb. And this year we go on into Ophir, which is also a nice checkpoint. I guess they're all nice checkpoints to me. I love every one of them. And we always have a good time there. There's a cabin that they welcome us into, and I've seen it when there was hardly a standing room inside of the cabin, and everybody's always welcome, and they take real good care of us. And then we go out of there, and this year we'll turn south and go up over the Beaver Hills and down to Iditarod.
Iditarod, 1983, the 6th day.
They'll all go in. I shut them in last night.
That is the sound of $2,000 in silver ingots as they were presented to Eep Anderson of Takotna, the first musher to pull into the halfway point at Iditarod checkpoint. Anderson arrived at Iditarod at 4:11 this afternoon, culminating a night and day race between the Flying Anderson and the Cowboy. Cowboy Smith reached Iditarod at 5:20, still in hot pursuit. After all, Nome is still 597 miles away. While Anderson enjoyed his success, the weather in the interior turned windy, lowering chill temperatures to near 40 below in some places, and the skies turned overcast. With the change in the weather, the persistent optimism of the mushers who are still checking into McGrath turned to quiet determination or outright pessimism. Gene Leonard of Finger Lake, who had been fighting a back injury since the first day, threw in the towel, becoming the first scratch of the race.
Well, I don't feel it's
I wouldn't be doing justice to myself or my dogs. I can't bend down to feed them. Can't chop the meat and whatnot. And I got my leader, he's gone lame on me anyway, so I figure I might just as well call it quits.
You have to, in this game, be able to roll with the punches. And if you can't go from a position where you are really down and say, well, things could be worse, you're not going to make it.
Well, I got to McGrath and I says, hey, this is nuts. There's no nothing rational about the schedule I'm on. And it seemed crazy. You drive dogs for 8 hours and then you stop for 2, and then you realize the dogs are tired and you say, and then you drive them another 2 hours and you stop for 8, and there was no schedule. And plus, the schedule I was in was getting to be nuts too. I wasn't enjoying the trip, and I just figured, well, regardless of what happens, I want to drive a dog team in the Nome. I want to ride behind the sled. I don't want to walk. I don't want to have to cajole these dogs every time I get to a checkpoint. So that's what I decided to do, and it seemed like it worked.
Seems like that's the story of this whole race. All my equipment has not worked. My headlamps went out at Finger Lake, and I had to go into Finger Lake in the dark, and I've had continual problems with headlamps ever since. I busted up 2 sleds so far, and now my cooker is not working.
Having a nice day, Dee.
and I think I've got strep throat, the doctor just said.
Why are you running the Iditarod, Dee?
This is it. This is the last year. I'll go home, be a checker.
Are you enjoying the race other than the problem?
Yeah. I'm enjoying the race, and I've a whole different outlook on racing than I've ever had before. I've never been up front.
Seems like most of the long runs goes in the night, and oh, you sure can feel sleepy out there.
I'm having a good time. I mean, it's been really up and down, though, Will. Tried to go through to Iditarod late at night, and the wind must have been blowing about 30 miles an hour right after we come out of the woods. I was with 3 other guys. We were all traveling, separately but pretty close together. We didn't know where each other was, but I came out of there, and I was about half asleep on my sled, and my dogs got off the trail, and I didn't know it, and the first thing I know, I'm down at the bottom of a hill, and the wind's blowing, and there's no trail anywhere, so I had to park and look around for about an hour, and then I found a flag, but I didn't know which way to go when I found it. So I drove back towards Ophir for a few miles, and the next morning, I didn't know where I was going, so I just parked and camped, and the next morning, Russell Ivy comes charging up to my sled, stops, screeches on the brake, and says, "Hey, Ken, you're pointed the wrong way." So that was a little disheartening to have that happen. But I got turned around, and what should have been a 15-hour trip from Ophir to Iditarod turned into about 31 hours. So, and then I got lost coming over here to Anvik. I drove right by the stake markers for the turn to Anvik, so that took me about 3 hours extra. So just from being lost, I probably lost 24 hours, during the race. But still having a good time.
I don't know. I'm just going to play it by ear and see what happens. I still got 10 solid dogs, and that'll get me to Nome, but boy, losing those leaders, that was the beginning of all the problems.
If I do make it in the top 20, it's not going to be very profitable. If I have to come all the way back from Nome, it's going to cost me too much, so I'm just kind of, I'll take a couple hours rest and decide, I guess, but it doesn't look too good right. Some of my dogs my leader is not eating very good. He's been having problems since yesterday, so I'll wait and see.
They're getting kind of gloomy. The hills really took a lot out of them. I hope now with the little bit of flat, they'll kind of perk back up. And I can't quite get them to drink like I want them to. If they would just drink, I know they would, perk back up. I feel fine. I guess I'm just kind of gloomy because the dogs are kind of blah.
Yeah, I'm going to cross a horse with an alligator and put iron shoes on it, and you only have to feed reptiles once every 2 months or so. And anyway, when he comes down the trail, he eat everything in sight. So I won't have any food problems. I won't have any feet problems. And all I got to do is train him to trot 17 miles an hour. And then in the race, I'll slow them down to 12 so they won't be doing too much.
That should do it, you think?
Yeah, that ought to win. If it don't, you can get rid of your competition. Ain't nobody going to pass you.
Oh, it's pretty cool. He's a really good guy. Like Leroy Shank says, you can't complain about anything on Iditarod if you look over at Colonel taking 45 minutes to get out of his sleeping bag.
Well, I know I'm the oldest and I'm the slowest. But somebody said to me the other day, you're old enough to know better. But I'm really young enough to try it again.
He's a really, really nice guy. I mean, he has compliments for everybody. I think he complimented a few trees going by. I mean, just to keep the words going. So it's really nice, and he's got all these stories, and it was fun, and it kind of makes you wonder, you can't really complain too much. I mean, he's 60 years older than me, so it also makes me think if I run 60 times again, I ought to be able to do better in 21 days.
I feel like
The bell in the Episcopal Church in Anvik as Larry Cowboy Smith checked in last night. The Dawson City Musher was the first to reach Anvik and the Yukon River. By being the first to the Yukon, Smith received $1,000 and was served a sit-down dinner by a chef clad in bunny boots.
How's the trail, Cowboy? How's the trail? How are your dogs doing?
All right.
How long do you figure you'll stay here?
Until I leave. Just I'm gonna have to rest my dogs about 6 hours anyways, I guess.
What's it gonna be like going up the Yukon now with that wind coming down at you?
Well, it's not gonna be pleasant for the dogs.
You gonna be able to keep pushing as fast as you've been going?
No, we'll find out.
5.5 hours, 5 hours and 15 minutes from Shackleton, 25 miles?
It's pretty slow. I was lost for a while there. That's cut off the trail over one of those big flat bogs over there. Couldn't pick it up.
Is that blown in much?
Yeah, it was blown in there.
Is that pretty much the same blown in like it was from Iditarod over to Shack?
Well, it wasn't blowing too bad there on the last half. It was blown in, but the first half was all right.
What was it like when you hit the Yukon here? Was there any trail at all?
Yeah, it was drifting pretty bad, but it was all right.
Good luck.
Thank you.
6 teams were right behind Smith, including Eep Anderson.
We gotta go Grayling, then Eagle Island, yeah.
Will you stop in Grayling or just go?
Oh, we gotta stop and feed there. Gotta feed there. Yeah. If we can get up to Eagle Island, we'll be doing pretty good. Up that cold river.
Where are you going to pass Cowboy again?
We'll probably see him at Grayling. I'm pretty sure we'll probably pass him there. He might hang with us, I doubt it, but...
You think he's out of it?
No, not really. Sometimes dogs pick up, you really can't count a guy out, He might be sneaking around and really got something.
How tough is that for your getting lost last night out there between Shackleton and Anvik? How tough is that for you?
Well, it kind of bombed them out a little bit, but they'll be all right.
How about you?
No, I was all right. It's kind of, I don't like to make backtracks. Just don't seem right. I go straight ahead. Come on. Guy loses 10 miles, that's quite a bit. It's an hour, lead. Especially when you're running this close, a bunch of people.
You still going to win this one, Rick?
Well, I'm trying like hell.
I don't know. It's really hard to say.
You think everybody behind you's gonna get stuck in that blown trap?
I don't know. Swinson will probably make it through. Sonny, I'd be more worried about them rookies. Like I told Bobby Lee, the last 20 guys, by then the weather's going to change enough to where they probably won't make it unless he sends a snow machine out to re-break the trail or...
Shagaluk to here?
Shagaluk, no, Iditarod to Shagaluk. The trail in, but they didn't mark it at all. You know, like us, me and Ethan, some of us, we know the basic way. But some of the guys going to be out there, they don't know diddly nothing.
Take care, Rick.
You're leaving?
Levon, are you leaving earlier than you wanted to here?
I guess. No, I was only going to stay a little while.
You're heading out?
Yeah, if I can get out of here. I ain't got no leaders. I mean, when there's somebody in front of you, you might as well leave.
Yeah. Well, good luck, Levon.
You want to grab my sled? Are you a sled head?
Levon, you want me to take your dog? You want me to sit on a sled? I can lead him out if you want, or...
And then you start up the Yukon. The river is more or less Iditarod, so they're going now up to Blackburn and, well, Grayling, Blackburn, and Eagle Sliding up that way into Cowatag. And that, I think, will be the most difficult part of the trail this year in the entire race, will be that river. I know there wasn't any trail until recently past Grayling, and that means new trail, and it's means a lot of marking. There's lots of sloughs and lots of areas that you can get it off the trail, and I just feel if anyone's going to have any problems, that's where you're going to have it this year before you get into Cowatag.
Iditarod, 1983, the evening of the 10th day. Good evening. I'm Dale Harrison. The leader in the 1983 Iditarod International Sled Dog Race is Takatna's Eep Anderson. He pulled out of Caltag this evening at 5:12 with 12 dogs, dropping one dog. Anderson arrived in Caltag this morning 15 minutes behind Larry Cowboy Smith, who had pulled in at 8:06. The next to arrive was Terry Adkins in the middle of the afternoon. Adkins says he'd have been there sooner, but he got off on a wrong trail.
But every time you turn the dog team around and go back the other way a couple of times, you lose some attitude. They think you don't know what you're doing, and at that point you don't. So first you lose your own attitude, knowing that you've lost whatever lead you had. A rest is going to help my dogs, but it's certainly not going to repay the 5 hours I lost out there. That's gone, and I'm going to pay the price when it comes to positions up in Nome. I'm not going to finish as high as I would have if I'd continued on with the 5 hour lead that we had there. People in the back are definitely gaining. That's one reason I pushed on today, was to try to just hold as much position as I can. But I know that there's people back there with stronger, faster teams right now than I've got. It's still a long way to Nome, and I haven't given up by any means.
It's a well-marked trail going into Unalakleet. It can be nasty if the winds are blowing bad and storming, but usually the tripods and all are visible, and you can go on into Unalakleet. And of course, in Unalakleet, you get a big welcome again, and there's showers and bathrooms and things that you can use. That's a pleasure to get back to for most of the mushers, and also you can prepare then for the run to Nome. Because that's where I think the real mushing starts. You've got to take excellent care of your dogs, and to do good, you've got to push them to the maximum, and you've got to be real careful that you don't go over that, because you can get your dogs exhausted, and you just have to stay until they get all right again. But if you can just go enough to keep them so that they're happy and so that they're working right up to their maximum ability, you could do real good from there on into Nome.
Iditarod, 1983, the evening of the 11th day. Good evening. I'm Dale Harrison. Mushers are out into the winds on the coastline of the Bering Sea, headed for Shaktoolik, Koyuk, and Nome. Eep Anderson is out of Unalakleet. Before he left, KSKO's Will Peterson asked him how it was going.
Good. It's going good.
Yeah? When are you going to get there?
Let's see. About the third day from now, today. I should be there.
That's Friday, you figure?
Friday, yeah.
Who's the team you're worrying about the most?
See, Rick Mackey, maybe Terry Adkins. I don't know what kind of shape Herbie's in. Those are threats right now.
Eep Anderson, who's on his way to Shaktoolik and Nome. Some say it's Rick Mackey, third into Unalakleet. That's the one to watch.
Well, I don't know about that. I've got a good team. I've got a shot at it. I think Rick Swenson's the man to beat. He's the guy I'm after.
Others back on the Yukon have been getting lost.
We're the lost planet mushermen, this group here.
That's Dwayne Halverson of Trapper Creek. He and others were lost on the Yukon following trails to nowhere.
Then you get in Shaktoolik, and there you really get a welcome. Those people are real doggy, real Iditarod, and they really show you a good time while you're there, and good food, and help you every way possible. And it's a good place to spend about 4 or 5 hours. And then you head out for Koyuk. And that can be difficult because you're going to go out across the tundra and then about 20 miles, and then you're going to hit about 40 miles of ice. You're going to cross the bay there. And it's usually well marked. It's marked with spruce or poles. And it's a good trail across there if the wind isn't blowing. And if you make it at night, it's amazing how far you can see the lights of Koyuk. You go and go and go, and you think you're never going to get there. And then if there's lots of ice piled up, pretty soon you'll think they turned the lights out. You won't see any lights at all. And then pretty soon they come back on. And I know the first time when I went through there, we'd stop and say, well, I wonder why they keep turning the lights off and on. And what it was, we was just getting behind some big piles of ice. And you can see, I think at least 40 miles, you can see the lights. So, you know, if you're only going about 8 miles an hour, it's going to be about 5 hours. And it just seems like you're never going to get there. So you're always tickled to death when you finally get into Koyuk. And then usually you're getting real hot now in the race. And about 3 or 4 hours is all you dare stay. And they've got an armory there where you can go in and good place to cook your dog food. And your dog food is readily available right there for you. Everybody now is real interested in getting you able to go just as quick as you want to go, you know. So you usually have plenty of help, and stay 3 or 4 hours, and then you've got to have somebody to guide you out of there because you go out always just a little bit different past the winter airport that they have on the ice there, and there's always somebody with a snow machine that's ready to take you out about a half a mile and put you on the trail. Then you got about 8 miles of ice, and then you go up over the mountain and on down into Moses Point and into Elam, and that can be a real rough area. I've went through there when it was fairly nice, but most of the time the winds are blowing, the trail disappears, and you have a real tough go through there. And oftentimes mushers are lost and they can't find the trail, and you're always glad to get into Elam. The people there are real happy to see you, and they also have everything available right where you can grab it and get ready to go because they know you're not going to stay very long.
8:58. I can't find my
Simon.
How's the trail?
Good. Welcome to Elam. Glad to be here. We gotta check the sled.
Okay. I've never done this before. It's everything new. So you have, how many dogs do you have?
11.
Okay. So I gotta see a sleeping bag.
The hell is that?
Want me to help
That's
you?
okay, maybe I can.
Okay.
We can get in and look. Bag, axe, nail.
No. And no shoes.
Right here on the side.
Okay. Okay, you could go with the day belonging to your house. Okay?
I'm gonna put them on the trail here. I'm only gonna be here about an hour. I want to get on the trail. We're gonna park them. I'll feed them.
Hey, bro. What, boss? Hey, how's it feel to be out in the lead? How's it feel to be out in the lead?
I feel a lot better if I can hang on to it.
Do you think you can?
I don't know.
How are the dogs
I'm
holding?
gonna try.
Was it too warm today for the dogs? You got 11 dogs. They're eating pretty good, and they're all standing up. They look like they're ready. You got, I guess, about a day here to Nome. You ready for the last push now? Are they ready too?
Yeah. Last shot. Gotta give it the shot, I guess. I'm gonna shoot me up here.
Who do you feel your biggest threat is right now behind you?
I know, Rick Mackey, I think.
Coming in here with, what, 9, 10 dogs, and Cowboy's in front with his 7. I think a lot of people are surprised that Cowboy's still been pushing as hard with those 7 that he has.
Yeah, well, you know, he's moving pretty good. He coming out of Koyak today. Well, I passed him once, but then we stopped and fed the dogs, him, Herbie, and I, and Cowboy took off. I've never seen him again yet. There's only 7, but they're about the same pace as what Herbie's got 12. I've got 10, but still we're going the same speed. This Cowboy's running a little more, I guess. But
Do you think you can pass him up before
Yeah.
Nome?
Yep.
What about Eep?
Maybe. Eep's going to be a little tougher, but I hope to.
Follow 68 teams and drivers over 1,200 miles from Anchorage to Nome is a wonderful experience. To have been with and talked with these 68 people in Anchorage, McGrath, Iditarod, Anvik, Unalakleet, Shek, Tulik, and now Nome is something to remember always. But as was said at the beginning some 13 or 14 days ago, this was a race, and there can only be one person to come across the finish line first. And last night, Rick Mackey became the champion. Second place was Eep Anderson. Third was the Cowboy, Larry Smith. Fourth, Herbie Nyakpuk. Fifth, Rick Swenson. Next, Levon Barvey. And then Dwayne Halverson. And then Sonny Lindner. And it will continue for another week until all of them cross the finish line here in Nome. But others will tell you who finished in what place. I can only hope to relay what the race was like. Susan Butcher said she would be satisfied with nothing less than first place. Yet that will have to be another year. Levon Barvey said he had only one dog pulling, yet he finished 6th. Roxy Woods had a dog die. Eep Anderson knew he was fading. His dogs were fading. He said for days that Mackey could beat him. Mackey said that Swenson was the man to beat. Everybody wanted Herbie to win, and we'll all wait for another year. Cowboy Smith runs like no one else, and once again he is beaten in the last days. Sonny Linder camped and ran with Swenson for the whole race, and once again follows him to Nome. Wes Atherton shoots a dog to end its suffering and is disqualified. The Bartkos are on a camping trip, and the trail committee disqualifies them. Emmett Peters has sick dogs and continues on. We never did report on the different dog feed along the trail from Alpo to Tallow, with chicken, hamburger, lamb chops, and liver in between, or the booties for the dog feed to protect them from shards of ice on the Yukon and gravel bars in Rhone. Booties made from blue jeans, pigskin, polyester, heavy felt, or Gore-Tex. Dee JONROWE broke 2 sleds, 1 cooker, had strep throat, and mushed on. Dave Munson got lost his contact lenses, and mushed on. Jim Strong split his knee with an axe, and mushed on. Guy Blankenship had diabetes, and mushed on. Norman McAlpine will finish a week from now, and he mushes on. Of course, everyone has their favorite, win or lose. I talked with Ebe Anderson all through the race. He's from Takotna, but he's from McGrath, too, and I wanted him to win. Rick Mackey shared all of his thoughts with anybody at any hour of the day, and I wanted him to win. Ken Johnson, a rookie I work with, I wanted him to win, and now I want him to finish. And many of the teams will continue for days, but the race is over. Last night, or I should say early this morning, I talked with Mackey 4 hours after he came across the finish line. He was ecstatic. 6 years he's run this race, and now he's won it. But he was confused. He said he has dreamed of winning for years, and now he's done it. But when he crossed the finish line, someone gave him champagne. He hugged his wife, and race officials escorted his dogs away to care for them. And Mackey stood with me hours after that, asking, "What do I do now?" Saying, "I don't know what to do." And the race is over. In Nome, I'm Will Peterson.
Rick, in 1925, 19 mushers relayed diphtheria serum along the Iditarod Trail to Nome. Did you think about that, mushing on into Nome this evening?
Nope, I didn't think about that. I just thought about Eeps right on my butt, and I better keep going.
Where did you pass him at?
Just this side of safety. But then I had to stop and switch lead dogs, and he caught right up with me. And I've been seeing his light off and on. I can see his head bobbing up and down as he's pumping. Where's the mutt? And that's why I kept my headlight off, because I knew his dogs were chasing it.
Did you guys say anything when you passed him?
No, in fact, see, he had his light off, and I didn't even see him coming, and my leaders ran right to the back of his sled, and he looked back like that, and then he goes, you know, I took him totally by surprise, and he just says, "Go on by to me," and that wasn't what I was planning on doing. Like I told my wife earlier today, if I catch him, I'm not going to pass him until we get real close to town here. And it just all happened real quick. I was by him before I knew it, and then I had to keep pushing like heck to lose him. So it's been the last hour and a half or whatever. I've been a nervous wreck. I didn't know I had it until I seen that chute. Eep's not very far behind. It looks like it now, but I kept seeing him every inch of the way coming in.
What's it take to win an Iditarod?
Lots of hard work. That's the main thing. And good dogs. I'm exhausted, but I'm really happy. I don't even know how happy I am. It hasn't really hit me yet.
Public radio coverage of Iditarod 1983 was made possible through the cooperation of many people, among them Timothy Cochran of KOTZ in Kotzebue, and from KSKO in McGrath, Will Peterson, who produced this program, and also from KSKO Dale Harrison, Gail Scher, Chuck Hind, Adele Chase, B.J. Huffman, Denise Forsgren, and Betty Flath. We would also like to thank Tom Goldman and David Postman of the Alaska Public Radio Network. Also thanks to Joe Redington for his description of the Iditarod Trail. And the Iditarod Trail Committee we extend our thanks, and of course, the mushers themselves who were willing to talk about their adventure despite their fatigue. Thanks also to Doyon Limited for permission to use the music from Spirit of the Wind. Partial funding for the production of this program was provided by the Atlantic Richfield Company and by North Pacific Airlines, Alaska Mill and Feed, Ray's Harness Shop, the Iditarod Trail Cafe in McGrath, and Arrow Volkswagen of Anchorage. This program was a production of KSKO Radio in McGrath, which is solely responsible for its content. This is APRN, the Alaska Public Radio Network.